welcome back to the show. And today I'm going to be talking about this new poll from Georgia and just kind of the race as a whole. That's basically what we're going to be looking at today. So make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter in the description down below, and join the Discord server so you can get all the latest updates and news and talk within our community. And so pretty much just before we even start the show, I actually want to say that I really appreciate the support we've gotten so far. We've had 3,000, like 3.8 subscribers gained in the past like 2.5 weeks. Like literally, yeah, tomorrow makes 3 weeks that I hit 10K, and we're already at 13.6, which is absolutely insane. So I really appreciate the support with everybody involved. I genuinely very much appreciate it. But let's get into the show. We're gonna get into what people actually want to hear. And so right now we're looking at a poll, and it's Georgia 2024. Trump's ahead of Biden. We see 16% of voters express support for other candidates in broader race. Quinnipiac University, Georgia finds poll 50% of voters agree with the guilty verdict. And it basically says Donald Trump has a slight, I love how the media likes to put it. This is the interesting part. The media really likes to put it as a slight lead in Georgia. Yeah, he has a slight lead of 5 percentage points. That's a likely characterization, by the way. It would be the same margin that the state was in 2016, just for reference. And that was not a slight lead. That was a pretty comfortable win for Trump in Georgia. So media likes to kind of frame stuff. It's kind of funny how that works. But we can see here that Trump's ahead by 5. Republicans back Trump 94-4, Democrats 93-4. So you see that one little percent is off, and independents are basically even in the state. That's essentially what this is looking at. And it says in a six-way hypothetical race, we see Trump's ahead with 43 to Biden's 37. So he's actually up by 6 with Biden with third-party candidates included. And the funny thing about this, guys, is that this is a very liberal pollster. This is a pollster that in the midterms had Raphael Warnock beating Walker by 10 in the first round and literally ended up only winning by like half a point in the first round. And they had Kemp and Stacey Abrams tied in his re-election race, and he ended up winning by 8. So it is a really bad pollster in terms of accurately predicting elections. And we can see here half of voters, 50% agree with the verdict, while 44% disagree. And guys, here's the thing, despite that case, there is actually more inclination for people to say it is more likely that they're actually going to vote for him, and he's gained support. Just because somebody thinks that the trial, just because they agree with the decision doesn't mean they think the trial's fair. You could go be out there and say, "Oh, well, I agree with the verdict." Like you could say, "Oh, I agree with it," but at the end of the day, you still might not think it's fair. And so there's a lot of people out there like that, and I guess the mainstream media doesn't necessarily understand that. And it says Donald Trump is behind on abortion by 2. He leads Biden on democracy, so he's ahead by 3. The response to Russia's invasion, Trump's ahead by about 13. In Gaza, he's up by quite a bit. And on immigration and the economy, he's up by about 20 in this poll. And we can see that basically the job approvals, Biden is down basically 24 points in favorability. And Brian Kemp is actually up by a lot. And Donald Trump, believe it or not, apparently, from what I understand, is only down in this poll by about 3. You could see Senator Raphael Warnock is up by 10 in the state, and we see Senator John Ossoff is up by a pretty decent amount in the state, which is quite funny. And if we keep going, we'll actually see that we could see the women vote. Biden's ever so slightly winning that in Georgia, but the men votes a pretty big, difference. Um, 4-year college degree is interesting because he's actually winning that category with white voters by a pretty decent amount. Trump's winning that by quite a bit, which is really interesting. And we can see he's ahead with all age demographics. So he's even ahead with 18 to 34-year-old voters in this poll, which is also very interesting. And we see with men, he wins that by 40. He even wins women by a pretty decent amount. He actually wins women by about 29 points according to this. And so, well, actually, you know what? Let me turn up my mic volume. We're gonna go ahead and turn up my volume really quick. Just give me a second. I just saw somebody said that they can't necessarily hear. So I'm gonna turn up, there it goes. So you guys should be able to hear me a lot better now. Yeah. Sorry guys, I wasn't really looking at chat per se, but it should be a little bit better now. It should be better now. So just type in the chat. It should be better now. And we can see here essentially Biden is performing, exceptionally well, or Trump, excuse me, is performing very, very well. We can see that what's quite interesting is that the people that are most likely to actually tune into the debate are Republicans. So that's also pretty interesting. You see, Dem enthusiasm to tune into the debates is actually pretty down, which is pretty interesting. And we can see, women are slightly more favored to watch the debate, college degree, whites with 4-year college degrees, yes, 77%, but with no college degree is actually a greater margin there. And we actually see the likeliest group to watch the debate in age group is 65 plus, and we see women slightly favored here with white, and then you see here, and so we see with black voters, they're also pretty enthusiastic to watch the debate overall. And we can see here Donald Trump is only down by 3 points in favorability in Georgia. He's only down by 3. Biden is down by like 20 something points. So I find it pretty difficult. And what's funny is he's at 46 and Biden's at 38. That's a let's do the math. He is up in favorability against Biden by 8 percentage points. Guess what my election model has the state at right now? It has it as a 9.6 percentage point victory for Donald Trump. If you were to factor in third party candidates into the difference in their approval ratings, it would make a lot of sense. So the difference in their approval ratings is +8 for Trump. Factoring in third party candidates, you could see something around where my margin has it right now. So all these people that are like, oh well, your model's crazy. Not really. I mean, not really. Basically, approval ratings tend to very accurately predict um presidential election vote shares, especially in the national popular vote. It tends to be very effective. And so this poll is extremely bad for Democrats because they were expecting to gain in this poll. A lot of people were, oh, Biden's finally going to lead a poll in Georgia since like November of like last year, essentially. And Robert F. Kennedy is actually down in favorability more than Trump, by the way, which is quite interesting. He actually is down, or at least in range with Biden, which is quite funny. Now, it also is because he hasn't had a lot of name recognition, so that's also something to take into account. You notice the young vote, that's the group that's hurt him the most. So that's also interesting. And men is the group that's also he's seen the most name recognition with. And so those two demographics are really favoring Kennedy. And so if Biden takes away a lot from those voters, that's going to be pretty interesting as a whole. Brian Kemp is up by quite a bit, actually. He's even favored by a pretty large amount of Democrats, but the independent vote is actually what makes him pretty popular. However, he is unfavorable to some Republicans, which is quite interesting. That's a really funny, like, makeup for his approval rating. I don't know. I just find that, like, pretty funny. And so we can see John Ossoff, he is doing very, very well. Even with Republican voters, he's not really that unfavored, essentially, which is pretty interesting. And so overall, that is something, it is going to be very interesting. It really, really is. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out in Georgia. But overall, based on this poll and based on the fact that, look, Trump gained a decent amount, you know, and so essentially Donald Trump has Georgia in his column. I mean, realistically, guys, he has the election in the bag as of right now. That's what my election model has it at. That's basically what it has it at. And the reason why it's at that is because there are many factors that go into this that people just don't understand. The mainstream media, all these political pundits don't know how to do their job. You can see Donald Trump leads by 1.1% in the latest national aggregate. He's ahead by a couple points or at least a point. And what's funny is that you can account for a 2020 polling bias. So it underestimated Republicans by 4.3%. And we see here the adjusted popular vote is 5.4. I'm expecting a margin of error somewhere around 5 points, which would put the popular vote at 6.1. My election forecast has it at 6.2% victory for Donald Trump as of right now. And so he is picking up, again, he's picking up quite a few states on here, essentially. He is picking up a lot of states. He is, holding these states from before pretty strong. That's the thing. He is doing pretty strong. I see the chat mainly disagrees. I'm gonna go into the data and explain why my election model currently has it, you know, this is the thing. If you plan on having a family, it wouldn't make sense to vote for Biden. Guys, I understand that it may seem a little very foreign that Trump could possibly be winning in an electoral college now last night. Now again, if none of us turn out, this is not gonna happen. But based on all the data we have, it seems like he is pointed to a pretty big election victory. And I'm going to even show you guys and test out the model to show you guys what would have to happen for Biden to barely win the election. I'm going to actually show you what would have to happen in that scenario. And so essentially, we have Donald Trump. This is essentially the map. Donald Trump goes out there. He basically wins 345 electoral college votes as of now. He basically picks up all of the traditional states that he lost. So he picks up all the states he lost in 2020. He picks up Nevada, New Mexico, Minnesota, Nebraska second. He picks up Virginia and New Hampshire in this scenario. Now, here's the thing. Two recent Wisconsin polls had Biden up 7 and 5. Where were those polls? Because I haven't even seen that. Starriza says, "Do you have a Discord?" I actually have it in the description down below, so you could join it there if you want to go ahead and join. And so, guys, I know this seems very skeptical, and you're like, okay, why is he winning by this much? This makes no sense. Well, if we go back to 2020, we're going to see here that Biden was leading in the aggregate by a pretty decent amount. He was up in the aggregate by quite a couple points. If I can actually have this refresh, I hate it when it doesn't. I hate it when it doesn't refresh this. He was up by 8.4 percentage points in the aggregate, according to 538. That's a 3.9 percentage point polling error. And then you have, DDHQ was off by 4.3, RCP was off by 2.7. And so what's interesting when you look at it is that Donald Trump always has outperformed polling. Now, again, this is a different election cycle. However, based on everything that we've looked at, Biden had a +6 percentage point approval rating. He was leading the aggregate by 8.4. Everything was going right for him, and he managed to barely pull through. Barely pulled through. He barely made it out alive. Let's look at the polls in Wisconsin. I actually want to see what that looks like. Oh, look at FA. Oh, what in the world? That's weird. May 30th. Oh, but it's because they included Kennedy. Oh, that's weird. Huh, that's so strange that all the data is showing that when Kennedy's included, Trump ends up underperforming. But like this is super strange because the sample size is really low. I'm actually gonna go back and look at their last poll here. Did they even have another poll here? I don't even think they did. I think this is their first poll. We gotta understand too, Wisconsin's a really bad state to do polling with. I mean, it's just the polling there's abysmal, but that is pretty strange that uh that is really strange that he's up Biden's up by 7 and 5. That's really strange. I didn't even see that. That's super weird. I'm actually surprised Let's Talk Elections didn't even talk about it. That's super weird. Um, but either way, what we're looking at is Donald Trump leads the aggregate by 1.1. Biden's approval rating is minus 13.5, according to Decision Desk HQ, which I may be doing a collaboration with them at some point. So that is something in the works. According to Decision Desk HQ, Biden's ahead in favorability against Trump by 0.2%, and that shifts the election 4.3 points to the right from 2020. That results in this election model right here. And just to give you guys an example, Wisconsin is a 9.1 percentage point victory, essentially, right, for Donald Trump, according to my model. He was up by 8.4% in the state on the final day before the election. The polling error here was around, if we actually go ahead and look at it, it was around 7.7%. So if you were to add that up, it would actually add up to around 8.9 percentage points. Well, actually, the polling aggregate is about a point. So it basically adds up to 8.7% as the victory for Trump, and he's ahead by 9.1. And you may say, oh, well, the polling error is not guaranteed to happen and all the midterms and all this stuff. Well, the midterms are not like the presidential elections because you have different, completely, almost completely different coalitions that come out. And so, since they're so statistically different from each other, those two different types of elections, it's not really comparable. You guys also got to understand, too, that the people who do that are like, I honestly don't know why. They actually do that. And the reason why I don't understand why they do that is because, first of all, Senate elections are very individual to the state. And even though they're federal elections, the problem with comparing a Senate election to a presidential election is that not all the seats are up at the exact same time. So the popular vote for the Senate can be R+2, but if a bunch of blue states are missing from the map, yeah, duh. Obviously, the Republicans are going to be favored to win the popular vote. So that's why you kind of see those weird discrepancies. And then another thing you guys also have to understand is that college educated voters are a significant demographic that turns out for those type of elections, and that group used to lean towards Republicans a lot more before the 2020s, the 2016s. That demographic used to lean to Republicans a lot more. And when you look at the data, you should have known that it was not a red wave. We should have been able to pick it up. And if you look at midterms with basically with ever since Trump has been president, if you looked at the 2018 midterm, even if you looked at the previous midterms, a lot of the times the polling averages were somewhat accurate for the midterms. You know, for example, in the midterm, in 2022, you can see that the polling aggregate was off by 0.3% in favor of the Democrats. In 2018, we can see that the Democrats were actually underestimated by around a point in 2018. So it seems to be whatever year is supposed to favor the party, that's the party that gets kind of underestimated. It's kind of a weird metric, but that's basically what I've noticed. And so what's quite interesting is that that usually happens during midterm years. And the reason why is because a lot of people who lean towards being college educated, a lot of people who are very into politics, are the people who answer pollsters. Those are the type of people that answer pollsters. And so the thing is that of course during the midterms they're going to be more accurate because the only people that are going to turn out are the people that would answer pollsters. Presidential elections are different because you have a larger portion of the electorate, especially for a guy like Trump that's going to come out that wouldn't vote in midterms, that have never answered pollsters, that maybe have not even voted before. So that's what these people have to take into account. And Biden had around a 45-46% approval rating on election day in 2022, but Obama's favorability rating was like 40-41. So Obama's favorability rating was a lot worse than Biden's at the time. Even Trump had a much far worse favorability rating. And here's the thing about the 2018 midterms that we should have also been able to realize Biden might actually end up doing better is because Trump actually picked up seats in 2018. He did pick up seats in the Senate. We can see that the Senate in 2016 was 52-48, and Republicans picked up a seat. Now, granted, it was a very Republican seat. Like, basically, I'm pretty sure it was well, actually, you had North Dakota, Missouri, and Indiana all flip, and Florida, by the way, in a D+8 national environment. So you had all those flip, and even from the midterms, not gonna lie, a lot of people should have known that Trump was gonna win Florida because even though it was a very Democrat favorable year, the fact that Florida voted till R that year for all the races should have been a big indicator that that was going to be a bad election for Democrats in 2020. But regardless, you see that Trump did pick up flips. He did net a positive flip, and the only two seats that Democrats really gained were Nevada, which is a historically Democrat state, and then you had Arizona, which was a lean margin. So really the only true state that Democrats even picked up that year was Arizona. So realistically, the Senate elections for the Democrats were not even that great back then. They really weren't in hindsight. Yes, if they picked up Florida, if they picked up Texas, that would have been good. But really looking at this, it's sort of like now how before, okay, it's like, okay, well, if Democrats are leading by 8 points, they should hold on to Ohio. They should hold on to West Virginia seat, and they should have held on to Montana. Like those should have been expected to hold for Biden, or at least for the Democrats, especially since Trump was not on the ballot. That's an important thing as well. He's not on the ballot in those races. So even comparing 2018 to now is not even a very accurate way of doing it. In order to really do it, you need to go back all the way to 2012 where the Senate popular vote, by the way, was actually pretty large. It was like a basically, if you look at the popular vote for the Senate back then, it was actually D plus 12. And this is when Obama won the popular vote by around four, a little bit under four. But Democrats here won the popular vote by 12 percentage points. And Republicans, I believe, probably win the Senate popular vote now, possibly by maybe two or three. So if you were to shift every state to the right by about 15, and you would obviously include trends from 2018 and whatnot, but if you were to shift every state by 15 points, North Dakota with trends would be safe Republican. Montana would also be the exact same thing. Nevada and Arizona, I mean, they've trended left, and a model would account for that. But you clearly see that there is a little bit of a there is a big discrepancy here. There really is. There is a huge problem that people are not understanding is that Senate elections, presidential elections are different. House races are slightly more comparable because especially if you compare a district in 2020 to like 2024, like a poll, you could do that because it's a year with the president on the ballot and then you have the next one. So it makes sense to compare those, but you can't compare Senate elections with presidential elections because there's so many individual factors, especially governor races. You can't really compare it. Now, for example, DeSantis winning Florida by 19. Clearly, if he won it by a tilt margin last time, and now he's winning it by 19. Clearly, there is a big shift because he won it by a tilt margin in D plus 9, and the popular vote there was R plus 2 or 3, and he won it by 19. So that's like a 10-point trend to the right. So clearly, the state trends to the right. Like, obviously, that's not really that crazy, but even Texas here trends like a point Republican because if you look at like I can't believe they don't have the results here for the other governor races. I guess we have to go to the old ones. But if you go back to like these, for example, this popular vote was D plus 3 the previous time. And we see Kelly barely won Wisconsin, barely won. And if we look at now for if we look now at this popular vote, you would see, which is very interesting. I'm actually going to pull up the popular vote for this. If we go ahead and look, we should have known that it was not going to be a red wave year. We should have known. Looking at the data and understanding that the polls during midterms are more accurate because college educated voters tend to turn out. That's kind of the thing. 2022 results. So, does it not, do they not have it like a collective popular vote? Okay, here it is. All right, look, Democrats won the popular vote. Guys, Democrats won the popular vote here. So you should have known if you shift from D plus 3 to a tilt margin, a Kansas 2-point win for Kelly makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Now, clearly, Florida, you see the it's trends to the right by quite a bit, and you would have looked at polling data, but you should have been able to tell that this was not going to be a red wave year. Arizona, it was already trending Democrat, so you could have been like, okay, well, that's definitely going left off a cliff. Nevada was trending to the right, so if the popular was tied, you would have known, okay, that might flip. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, without Trump on the ballot, are just going to completely fall through with their base. And it would have been a 3 point shift from the previous election, where basically all of these governorships went Democrat. So the only race that would have been very inexplicable would have probably been Wisconsin. That would have been a weird one. I probably would have predicted, if I would have done this now, looking back, probably would have predicted Wisconsin flipping, and I probably would have predicted Michigan, not really even Michigan, because it only shifted 3 points. And Pennsylvania, I would have predicted it staying to the Democrat governor. Same thing in New York and a couple places here. It really just depends on the candidate sometimes, but if you look at the popular vote shifts, you can kind of tell where it's going to end up. You can kind of guesstimate where things are going to end up at that point. And so that is pretty interesting when you look at the results that way. You clearly see that it wasn't really that crazy that the Democrats overperformed in 2022. College educated voters have been trending to them. And so that is a big reason why you saw that underperformance. However, now we have a different electorate right now, which is going to favor Trump by quite a bit. First time voters are favoring Trump. Trump's gaining with African Americans. He's gaining with Hispanics. He's gaining with young voters. He's gaining with everyone. The guilty verdict is backfiring. The polling averages really hasn't changed. And all the data is looking bad. I actually posted a video about this before, but Biden would have to literally be ahead. He would essentially have to be ahead in the aggregate by 10 points and then be 10 points favored more than Trump with his current approval rating. So the only way he'd be able to win, literally the only way he'd be able to win the election as of right now is if Trump literally like completely tanked. Like Trump would literally just have to completely tank in the polls. He would have to completely tank in the polling data in order for this to happen. And the map that's actually projected here is this. I'm going to actually show it to you guys right now. He wins the popular vote by about 2.5. So all these people are saying, oh, if Biden's winning the popular vote by 4, Trump could still win. Not really, because Texas, Florida, Iowa, Ohio, those states are trending to the right. The Republican states are going to move to the right regardless, since Biden is so unpopular. So you can't really kind of go based off of that. And so these are the safe Democrat states. Hawaii's back. Maine Maine's first is back. All of these are back. However, New Jersey does not go in that column. Colorado does not. Illinois. New York goes safe. It's like a 19-point win for Biden. Virginia goes about 8 points for Biden. Illinois like 13. Colorado is like a 12-point win. New Jersey is like a 13-point win. Maine at large is a 10-point win for Biden though. And Maine at large is around a 9-point victory for Trump. Iowa and Ohio, if we look at the margins, you'll see Ohio's a 9-point win for Trump. Iowa's 9.3. And Texas and Florida, we see Florida be 7.5% for Trump. And then in Texas, we see a 7-point victory for Trump in the state of Texas as of right now. And in New Mexico, Biden wins that by about 7 points. So we see New Mexico vote to the right of Colorado by about 5. And Alaska is actually completely safe Republican, or is actually a likely Republican. It's a 10-point victory exactly in this scenario as of right now. And so Minnesota is a 6.6 percentage point win. That state trends to the left by about a point compared to 2020. North Carolina is a 2.7 percentage point win. New Hampshire, Biden actually improves there despite doing like 2 points worse than the popular vote, believe it or not. And Nebraska second is like a 3 point win for him. So it does trend about a point Republican. And I guess the model's kind of picking up that it did get redistricted slightly. So I guess that's why that's the case. And in Georgia, Trump actually wins here pretty easily. He actually wins, I mean, compared to the national environment, he wins by 1.6%. And it's voting like 3 points to the right of the nation. And in 2020, it voted about 4 points to the right. So it doesn't really trend to the left that much this cycle. It would only trend like a point Democrat. Arizona, you would see it trend about 2 points Democrat, though, because it would actually stay for Biden in this scenario. So between it and there, the literally the Arizona vote only got 0.2 percentage points closer. So it would trend like 2.5 points to the Democrats, essentially. That's basically what you would see. It would basically trend like 2.5 points to the Democrats as of right now. Nevada would actually be, according to my forecast, would end up being like a 0.9 percentage point win for Trump. So he'd barely pick off Nevada. Like he basically barely pick off Nevada. Biden would pick off Michigan in the scenario by 1.6%. Pennsylvania would be a 0.2 percentage point win, and Trump would be winning Wisconsin literally like by the skin of his teeth. It'd be super duper close. It'd be a very narrow race. And so Joe Biden would actually win the election here if he wins the popular vote by 2.5. And that's basically saying that the polls are going to be off by literally over 3.5 points. He literally have to have a polling error favor him by 3.5 points from the decision desk HQ in order for him to possibly barely win the election. And he's not even guaranteed this because if his approval rating is in reality worse than what it says here, he would still be losing the election here. He'd lose Arizona, he would lose Pennsylvania more than likely. So then Trump would be at like 297. So really in reality, Biden is at a really bad spot. He's at a really bad spot because he'd basically have to be like at a 41-42% approval rating. Trump would literally have to have like a 33% approval rating to like end up losing. Trump would have to get like literally like 64, 65 million votes, 63 to lose the election at this point. Like it's the data shows that Biden would have to be ahead by 9.6 in the aggregate with a minus 13.5 approval rating, and then Biden would have to basically be ahead of Trump by about 10 points in favorability in order to literally narrowly eke it out according to my model. Literally, he'd barely eke it out. Has Biden ever been in a good spot? Not gonna lie, in the beginning of 2023, when I plugged in all the data for 2023, yeah, he was. He actually was in a pretty good spot because he was ahead in the aggregate by two. He was ahead in Trump of favorability by about 5 points. His approval rating, we'll actually plug it in. His approval rating was like only -8 or something like that. It was a lot better. It may have been like -7.5 for him. So he was doing a lot better there. And Biden was ahead of Trump like 6.5% in like favorability rating back then. So Trump, according to this, would still be winning by quite a bit. But you got to understand all the polling aggregates were completely different. Biden was up in almost all the swing states. The demographics would have looked a lot different. So right now it shows Trump winning with 312 and he wins the popular vote by two. But Biden was looking a lot better back then. He was definitely he was definitely in a way better spot back then, 100%. He was in a way better spot before, for sure. Like that's not even a doubt. He was in a way better spot before. And so essentially when you plug in the latest data, you see that he is up by a pretty considerable amount. Donald Trump is up on Biden by quite a bit in this map. He is literally up in all of the states that he lost in 2020 from 2016. He wins Nevada, he gets New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, and New Hampshire, as well as Maine second, or Nebraska second. So right now, Trump is in a good spot, and everybody's going to be like, oh, well, no, he's not going to win in a landslide right now. But the current data shows that this would be his result. And I see AH says if Trump loses the Rust Belt, what would his chances be? What's his path? Well, if he were to lose the Rust Belt, let's just say hypothetically he loses the Rust Belt, his path would technically have to be through Nebraska second. That'd actually be his path. That's his simplest path. He'd have to win Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and he'd have to pick off Nebraska. That's literally all he'd have to do. He'd have to pick off Nebraska second, and essentially he would tie with Biden in the Electoral College, and then from there it would go to the House of Representatives. Major Jackson says that's best case scenario, where Trump is pretty much approaching his best case scenario now. Uh, Sunbelt Maine gets him to 70. If Biden is fighting to keep Virginia in November, that's not a good sign. I mean, yeah, that's the thing too. Like the polling aggregate in Decision Desk HQ actually has Biden ahead by like a point, and the RCP aggregate in 2020 had Biden ahead by like 11 or 12 in the state. So like, it's really not looking great. It's really, really not. It is like I'm telling you, it's not looking good for him at all. It's looking really it's looking bad. Like, I don't think people realize how screwed Biden is. Like, it's not like, guys, he went from a 52% approval rating to 41, 42. Trump went from 45 to like 41.9. Like, so Trump's gone down a bit, and now they're tied in favorability. But when you add in third party candidates and you add in Trump's base, it just throws off everything. It throws off the entire thing. That is the problem. That's the big problem for Biden. That's the major issue for Biden, is that Biden barely won while being ahead in favorability by 6, 7 points. And on top of that, he led the aggregate by 7.2. He only ended up winning by 4.5 in the popular vote. And he still managed to only barely win despite winning it by 4.5, which was a larger popular vote victory than Obama in 2012 against Mitt Romney. So I'm just saying, like, guys, all the data is pointing to Trump winning big. All the data is pointing to him winning an electoral college landslide. And even before, I was one of these people, even at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, it's going to be a close race. Like, it's going to be close. Like, don't get complacent, which honestly, right now, I'm not saying for you guys to get complacent, because this is not going to happen if we get complacent. But guys, look at this. Me and Gold Crown Politics were discussing this. Guys, the New York Times / Siena College polls, what they do is they essentially poll the people, and then they ask that same group, who did you vote for last time? And this is the biggest sign that they have not changed their methodology at all. March, Biden's ahead by 12. So the group that says they are going to go for Trump by 5 points nationally, they polled that same group. How did you vote in 2020? Biden, it's a Biden plus 12 sample. Guys, he only won the popular vote by 4.5. That's a huge miss. Biden plus 8 with a Trump plus 2 electorate. He only ended up winning by 4.5. In the swing states, Biden plus 3 in 2020. Now Trump's up 7, 10 points, 8 points, 17-point swing, which that's crazy. And then you had April, huge swing. And so if you basically get the average swing, that's about 11.3%. And so if you were to get the actual popular vote and swing it 11.3% to the right from 2020, you would have a 6.8 percentage point popular vote victory there. And when you look, he's up by 6.2. So everything is aligning with Trump winning big. Literally all the little data points that you could have looked at that would have shown that the midterms would have not been a red wave. And now, looking at those same data points, you see that Trump is winning big. Now, this can obviously be subject to change. This is not a permanent forecast. I have not said I'm gonna predict 6 months out that it's 345 and that's it. Like, that's literally it. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, according to my latest data, this is what the electoral map shows. If Biden were to even get, if this election were to be 312, let's say that ends up happening, right? Let's say it's 312. Biden would have to basically lead the aggregate by, again, he'd have to lead the aggregate. Really looking at it, Biden would have to be leading the aggregate by like 5 in order for that to even start happening. If you want to get to a point where the electoral college is just like 312 and Trump is even still winning the states by like a decent amount, Biden would have to be up in the aggregate by like 5 points for this to even happen. And Trump would still be up in the popular by like 2.8. Wisconsin would still be likely. Pennsylvania would still be likely. Georgia would still be likely. So, like, even then, it would still not be enough. It would still not be enough. It still wouldn't even be enough. It still wouldn't even be enough, guys. Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It literally would not be enough. That's the crazy part. He'd basically have to be up in the aggregate by literally the amount he was last time in order for there to be like a 312 victory that looks like what people are forecasting. He'd have to be up in the aggregate by about 7 for that to even happen. South Carolina would still be safe. It would still be a safe state. It would still be safe. Rhode Island would be safe Democrat. Connecticut, we'll go look at those, but I'm presuming those are safe. Yep. Delaware and New Jersey are not, though. Colorado is a 9-point victory. California. I don't even think Oregon is yeah, look, Oregon's still a 12-point win, including Washington's like 14. So those are not even safe either. Iowa and Ohio, they're around like 12-point victories, so they're likely. And we presume Texas and Florida would probably be as well. Hawaii would be safe. New Mexico would be a 4.1 percentage point victory. New Hampshire would be like a 4-point win. And we see here that Virginia 4.4 percentage point win. Illinois would be, as of right now, like a 10-point victory for Biden. So he'd be winning it by 10. Alaska would be a 13-point victory for Trump. So he'd be up by about 13 points. New York, if we take a look at New York, he's up there by 6. Biden's only winning it by 16. And Maine's second congressional district, Biden's up there by 28. 13 there, and then Maine's first is still like a Maine at large is still like a 6-point win for him. Minnesota, he's up by a lean margin, and then in all the swing states, even for North Carolina, he's still up by Trump's up by 6.5 essentially. And so if we had Wisconsin go, they would all be lean. All the states would be lean here. But and then in my forecast, Nebraska second would actually still be Till Republican, by the way. This is what a lot of forecasters are basically predicting for the election. This is what they have. According to my model, he'd have to be basically leading the aggregate by like 7.5 for this to even happen. So, guys, like honestly, like it's really, I'm telling you guys, it's not looking good for Biden at all. It's really not. Like it's just not. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll correct my mistakes. I'll add whatever I need to add to the model, look at things differently. But like honestly, all the data is pointing to Trump winning very big. And I've spent months working on this and really trying to make sure I'm weighing everything correctly, even incorporating this model as well alongside my original model. Like there is a lot of stuff that's going into this. Like I'm not taking this lightly whatsoever. I'm really trying my best to do as well as possible. What do I have to say about I think Trump really badly wants New York or New Jersey. That's his home ground. Even with how Trump good is polling, Rust Belt's still super close. If Biden wins this is still a close race. But the thing is that since the polling is close, Trump is like literally gonna probably outperform the polls there again. Because and on top of that, Biden's extremely unfavorable compared to 2020. Is Nebraska gonna change the law for the electoral votes? I don't think so. Which website do you use for the election timeline? Like, how can you scroll through past elections? It's called mapdudejackson.com. That's what it's called. Even Biden's dog hates him. Oh yeah, on point. Did you see the recent June prediction for LTE? Yeah, he literally has my map where Biden's literally leading in the aggregate by 9.5, and then would have to be Trump would have to be down 10 points in favorability against Biden for that map to even happen with Biden's current approval rating. Like it is so like it's just like guys, it is so bad. Like I don't even understand. Like with him having that map like this, it's just like really like come on. Like really like guys, and even when you look at the candidate approval ratings, like Trump was at 37, Clinton was at 42, but you had third party candidates which took away about 2 or 3 points. So D plus 2 would have made sense. 2020, Trump went from 37 to a 45% approval rating. Joe Biden improved from Hillary from 42 to 52. So Biden went up 10, Trump went up by 8. So based on that fact alone, looking at the increase in their approval ratings, you could have been able to predict that Biden was going to be able to win 2020. Just looking at their approval ratings alone, you could have been able to predict it because he gained, it was basically like a net 2 positive shift for Biden, essentially. It was like a net 2 positive for him, essentially, because he led by 7 points on Trump in favorability, essentially. And if you were to apply that same exact data like right now, if you were to apply the exact same data here, minus 5 point, well, what would it be? Because it would be minus 4.9. And again, this is kind of a weird way to do it because this is not looking at the actual previous results, but 7.2 minus 5.1. So if you were to do that, even if you were to apply the exact same data, now if Biden was ahead by 6 points in favorability, then Trump is gonna lose. Then yes, Trump loses, obviously. He still holds on to Nevada and Georgia. But if Biden is still down by like 13.8%, like it has it, Trump still wins fairly easily. He loses Michigan though, so that happens. He loses Michigan, but he wins Wisconsin, he wins Pennsylvania, he wins North Carolina, he wins Nevada, he wins Georgia, and he wins Arizona. So even if you were to have that data from before, Trump is just gaining now because the demographic margins just are way better for him. It's just the truth. The demographic margins are just way better for Trump now. I think Trump could also win the popular vote, which makes the victory sweeter. I think Trump's gonna very much win the popular vote right now. I think he can have a huge popular vote victory, in my opinion. I think he's gonna have a huge popular vote win, to be honest. I mean, basically looking at all the current data right now, I can't see him losing the popular vote right now. I really can't. I can't. I literally cannot see him losing it at all. So, and so essentially, right now he's ahead by 6.2. He gets about 75.3 million votes, and Biden gets 66.5 million. That's what my forecast has it at. And I know all the states, I basically have turnout down like 10% from the last election. That's basically what I have it at. I have turnout down like 10% from the last election. That's like what I'm forecasting. So I just applied that to every single state. Now, again, my data analyst is going to kind of project like how many votes there are going to be in each state. So we're going to get a better vote forecast pretty soon. But that's basically what we're looking at. Essentially, as of right now, that's basically what we're looking at. And by the way, for those of you guys who say, "Oh, but third-party candidates are not included," well, I use all the third-party margins. So like all the polling averages with all the third-party candidates, that's what I use for this. I don't use the head-to-head matchups. I actually use the third-party polling for these. So theoretically, third-party candidates are included in this model. Do you think Trump could flip a few counties in Massachusetts given the trends there and lackluster polling for Biden? I mean, yeah, possibly. He probably could. Turin Mosby says, very interesting analysis. Just subscribe. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. I mean, no, I mean, again, I think it does sound pretty crazy that Trump could really win by a pretty insane amount. Like, I get it. It does sound nuts, but when you look at all the data that would have shown that 2022 was not a red wave year, and you look at all those same data points now, it points to Trump winning very big in the popular vote. And that would result in a very big electoral college victory. Is there any way to forecast who Trump selects as his VP if it helps or hurts him? Typically, VPs don't really like affect the vote that much. Even Mike Pence, yes, it may have helped him barely eke out the Rust Belt, but it really, to an extent, it really didn't. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. The only person that I would say that would probably genuinely add like a point or two to the national aggregate, like he'd probably add like a half point, a point to the national aggregate, is probably Vivek. That's the only person I could say that Trump's popular, like his aggregate, like would he would probably gain like a point in the aggregate if that were to happen. But that's like the only VP pick that I think would actually benefit him. And like Ben Carson, you may see him gain like 0.3, 0.5% from a Ben Carson pick. Tristan says 347 is the ceiling, in my opinion. I think that's actually true because I can't see him picking off in New Jersey. I can't see him picking off Colorado, and I can't see him picking off any of those other states. The only one I could see him picking off left is Maine at large. So, for those of you saying, "Oh, this is a Trump best case," well, Trump is technically kind of approaching his best case scenario. He kind of is. Vivek would be a great choice. Why do they poll Massachusetts but not New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia? So dumb. That is true. And I really want new data out of New Mexico because my forecast has it going Republican. And if they have data that has it leaning more Republican, the state's like gonna get even more. Because like for example, like let's look at my polling aggregate for New Mexico. It's a 6.5 point win in New Mexico right now, or 7.5. So if let's say Trump were to come up with a poll where he's leading by two, that literally adds like 2 points to the New Mexico forecast on my end, and that would boost his victory up in New Mexico literally from like a tilt margin, like or 1.1 all the way up to like 2.3%. So like the polling average there would make a pretty big difference if it really is in fact like, if it's a really big shift like that, and if Trump has a poll where he's ahead or even tied, it's literally gonna add like a point to my forecast. So I really hope they add new data out of there. Um, I could see Trump flip Hawaii from a vote split or RFK having an upset there. That could be possible, especially since RFK, like when they did that poll, he was ahead by like only Biden was only ahead by 8 with thirds. So like there is a chance, like if Kennedy gets like 20 something percent there, you could see that happen, but like I don't know. All right, guys. Well, pretty much this is going to be it for the stream as of right now. I am going to end up going. We did go for about an hour as of right now. ADWW. I have made it public on multiple videos, so you can go ahead and look that up. You can actually go and look that up. Guys, before you guys leave though, I do want to say starting in around August, September, I am going to be getting equipment and things like that to start possibly setting up a sort of podcast for the channel and to kind of help the transition after the election, to kind of have it be like a daily political news update to a certain extent. So just letting everybody know in here that I will be continuing after November, and there is going to be a shift in the live streams as of then. So you will see that occur. But right now, guys, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord server in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Oh, Adre, Banada. I basically I just went over like my current data for 2024, and I pretty much what is it called? Yeah, I went over like 2024, and I went over like a new Georgia poll essentially. So I'm gonna have this public so you could rewatch it if you want, but that's essentially what I have. So